we saw it again in Chicago, didn't we?
Yep.
The All Blacks are still struggling to claim those high balls.
Watching it on TV, you feel the chills, but you being there when that starts and the sound of silence when 60 or 70,000 people fall absolutely silent, man, it's a powerful moment, isn't it?
The unavailability of Xander Fagerson, their tight end prop, is a real blow for Scotland. He has really anchored their scrum.
DSPN is brought to you by Novus Glass, proud partner of the Special Olympics New Zealand. The Special Olympics New Zealand National Summer Games is in Christchurch, Ōtautahi, this December. Across New Zealand, Aotearoa athletes, clubs, volunteers and families are getting ready, training, supporting each other and celebrating as the flame of hope travels down the country. Text Novus to 3598 to support our athletes. That's Novus, Novus, to 3598 to support our incredible athletes at the Special Olympics in Christchurch, Ōtautahi this December. Notice it, Novus it.
Welcome to the DSPN.
He's given him. Wow, there you go. He was forward.
Oh, a punch up now in midfield. Fraser's involved.
The Devlin Sports Podcast Network.
DSPN, second leg of the Grand Slam coming 4:10 a.m. New Zealand time Sunday morning, and Sky Sport have got coverage starting at 3:30 a.m. If you're like me, if you're old school, you got to get up and watch it live. I lie there in bed and I just naturally wake up. It's just what I do. I'm old and I'm thinking there's a game on, and I'll just lie there and just after half an hour think I might as well get up and watch it. I don't like this thing where I'll just sit there, alarm and record it and then get up in case, you always look at your phone, you're always stupid, you always do it, and I don't want the score spoiled or anything. So I'm one of those that will be joining you, my friend Tony Johnson, and the wee small hours. Of course, it's the afternoon in Edinburgh. The team is just up there on the screen. As you look at it, people, it is in. And there are one or two good talking points here, and we'll get into those. But, Tone, how's your week in Edinburgh been?
It's been great, apart from the fact that I've been waking up at sort of 3:30 in the morning ready to take the world on, Martin. I'm still not over the jet lag. But look, it's been good, and the weather is brightening up. It was a bit gloomy early on in the week, but now it's looking good for the weekend. And they're talking about it being very mild, very balmy. It's still probably 12, 13 degrees.
Balmy.
In the afternoon. And so we're going to have a fine afternoon for this test match. It's going to be quite an occasion, Martin, because this is the 100th year of rugby at Murrayfield.
Yeah, it's great.
I think we've mentioned when the All Blacks first played here, they played at a place called Edinburgh. We went and had a look at it the other day where they played on.
I saw your bit. Yeah, I saw your little clip. Yeah.
That was interesting. They've got a plaque there which Tana Umaga unveiled back in 2005. But yeah, they've been playing 100 years now at Murrayfield. It's one of the great places to watch a rugby game. And just to add to the whole thing, it's Remembrance Day coming up this weekend, when the guns fell silent on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. It's basically the answer. Well, we have Anzac Day earlier on in the year in April, and they have Remembrance Day to mark the end of the First World War. And it's always very poignant, and they're going to mark it at the stadium. So it's going to be fantastic. The lead up to the match at the stadium is going to be brilliant. And then, of course, we've got the game to look forward to.
Yeah, look, and part of that is I just love that lone piper thing. And, watching it on TV, you feel the chills. But you being there when that starts and the sound of silence when 60 or 70,000 people fall absolutely silent, man, it's a powerful moment, isn't it?
Yeah, and it is a really good crowd, Murrayfield. Yeah, of course they get animated and they get a bit excited, but generally they're a sporting crowd, and things like the moment of silence, they're observed completely. And the lone piper, as you mentioned, up on the roof of the stadium, they turn all the lights out. It was really funny. I remember talking to Jamie McIntosh about his first ever test for the All Blacks, which was at Murrayfield. And he had to run out in the darkness, and he said, I'm going to trip over something and fall over and make a goose of myself before I've even got on the field. It's something that they do really, really well. And, of course, by 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it is starting to get pretty dark now as they head into winter here. So, yeah, it's going to be set up nicely for the game. And of course, Scotland now, there's a bit of a buzz around for Scotland that they feel that this is their best chance of ending a drought that goes back 120 years since they first played them. And it is one of the biggest, if not the longest winning run between two sporting entities on record.
That is why we are
unbeaten, I should
unbeaten.
say, because they did get two.
That's
they
right.
did get a couple of draws.
Yeah, they got one. I'm pretty sure that they get one here in New Zealand, or they got bloody close one year. I remember sitting there in the rain at Eden Park. Grant Fox kicked us.
You probably think about 1991.
That was
And the upshot of that was that Buck Shelford got dropped.
That was the one. I was at that test, Tony.
Yeah.
And the rain was. I just remember the rain was coming into our eyes. Yeah.
Yeah, 2 draws over here. One in 1964, which denied Wilson winner race.
That was the 0-all
to
one. That was right. Yeah.
And then there was another one in 1983 when the All Blacks sent over. It was very much a below strength team. A lot of the top guys were unavailable for the tour, and Scotland got a draw against the All Blacks that year. And I think England beat them.
That's right.
So that's the closest that they've got. But the last 3 games between the two countries have been 8-7, 8 points. So Scotland have definitely, they narrowed the gap. For a while, they were getting thumped. But the last 3 times, in fact, you might recall the game, I think it was about 2022, and Stuart Hogg got away, and he looked like he was going to score, and Bowden Barrett cut him down.
Yeah.
And I think that was their big moment. That was their big chance, and it never quite happened.
Tony, I said must win last week over, before we played Ireland, and then, I sit there afterwards and go,
must win every week.
I know,
mate.
I do. And then, then I'm, grief about the performance. Look, I'm back in must win mode again, obviously, for this weekend, because, we need to go to England with, 2-0 as far as the Grand Slam goes. And that's why I think most of us were expecting a horses for courses selection. It came out last night, New Zealand time. You were at the press conference and everything else. The tight 5, absolutely as expected. De Groot, Cody, Newell. And a chance now for Lord and Holland. They virtually started the game last week. So I think this is great for these two, because we've talked about this during the week, haven't we? That lock was one position. If you look at the start of the year, you probably thought the All Blacks were a little light. And then losing Patrick and losing Tupu, who are, 2 of the guys that you would put in our top 4 or 5, losing those guys. The fact that we can actually put a combination like this out with Scott Barrett out, this is really encouraging, I think.
Well, it's a very tall second row for a start. Josh Lord, he is a really tall man. Of course, Fabian Holland, we know how big he is. Fabian Holland played another really strong game last week, but that was Josh Lord's best performance in an All Black jersey too. Know that the All Blacks at times had some issues with their own line out, but they pinched a lot of ball off the Irish, sent the Irish line out into a bit of a meltdown mode. So they get an opportunity, and that's great. That's miles on the clock for them. It's a chance they'll probably feel that they're falling something there. Look, you talked about being in win now mode. I think the All Black coaching staff are in win now mode as well. That they clearly are going to put this team or something very similar out on the field 3 weeks in a row.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe it could be that some people don't get much of a run at all on this tour, but clearly I think they'll name this something similar next week. Scott Barrett should be back for Twickenham. They're very encouraged by the rate that he's healing. He's been doing light exercise and everything seems to be healing pretty well. So, yeah, they'll look to those 2 guys to do the job this week. And of course, the other thing that we were looking to was that midfield combination that, again, I think changed the whole dynamic about the All Black back play in the Chicago test. They became much more direct, but much more about power. And so Quinn Tupaia and they start together. That makes a whole lot of sense to me. And the only other change being Wallace Sititi playing at number 6. And I think that's just purely a form thing. He came on, made a really good impact on the game. Simon Parker perhaps just wasn't able to influence the game as he would have liked. As you know, he's capable of. He had that HIA, so he's dropped the field for a while. And again, I think that just brings another bit of dynamism to that All Black loose trio. It's not the biggest in terms of height, but Wallace Sititi got a very explosive jump, so he's a useful line out forward anyway. So I quite like the look of the side, Martin, just with those adjustments that in a way have been forced on them. But I think it does bring just a little bit of extra dynamism to their attack.
And sometimes that happens in sport, doesn't it? Injury gives somebody a break, and before you know it, they actually cement that spot. And Quinn Tupaia is obviously seizing every chance that he gets. I think a lot of us are looking at that midfield combo very excited. And it might have happened by accident, so be it. In terms of Parker, Grigor was telling us yesterday, he actually wondered whether or not the knock on the head, the HIA, is perhaps part of the reason why he's been rested this week. If I put my Murray Mexted hat on for a second here, Tone, and the great Mex, who you worked with for a very long time and know well, Mex is always concerned about height in our loose forwards and that extra line-out option. If I was looking at this loose forward trio against England, I'd perhaps be a little bit more concerned. No disrespect to Scotland, but do we have enough height there? You say that Sititi's our third jumper then.
Yeah, and as I say, he's got an explosive jump, and you don't have to be a really big man, because with lifting, it's changed the whole modus at line-out time. Of course, in Murray's day, you didn't have lifting. In fact, some people didn't get off the ground much anyway. So
the old rice paper under the foot thing, wasn't it, Tone? That was the thing, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. And look, I think the All Black line-out's always better when Tupouva'i's in the mix, because he's so good at the front of the line-out at disrupting opposition ball. And so maybe, they do give up a bit, but I think what they miss, or what they give up in terms of height at line-out time, they get back around the field. Peter Lakai, they seem to be really sold on him as their number 8. Sititi's played a lot of his rugby at 8, but I think he can also play very capably at 6. And of course, you've got Artie Savia there as well. And those guys, they can win line-out balls. So it's kind of a bit of a balancing act there. The interesting one to me was on the bench, when we're thinking about, okay, who are going to be the backups, particularly with the domino effect, I guess, of the guys pulling out. Duplessis Kiriki gets the number 20 jersey, so he is the backup loose forward. They think that this is partly because they've got an idea how they think the game might pan out, and they think that his ability at the breakdown in particular could really come to the fore late in the game. Well, that's the reason that they gave for picking Duplessis Kiriki against, say, Jacobson or Samapeni Finau, who's become a bit of a forgotten figure, hasn't it? Yeah. And then in the back line, it was just simply a case of who they were going to use as a backup for that centre, possibly wing position. What they've done is they've gone with Billy Proctor, who, as we know, is an out-and-out centre. So if he was to come on, maybe Lester Whainga-Anuku would go to the wing.
You'd think that, yeah.
So that's probably the reasoning behind that. But the bench looks pretty good. Sam Darry comes in there as well. And what a great effort from him to get back from a rotten run of luck with injuries. And he's just so pumped, so fizzed about the opportunity to play in this match. I had a chat with him at training yesterday, and he was just so fired up. And then I thought Tamaiti Williams and Pasileo Tosi, who is making his way in Test rugby, but I think they came on and made a real impact off the bench. The scrum was really good in the later stages of the game in Chicago, and they got a decided edge there. So, I think all up, this is the best team that they can put on the field at the moment. I know people will be saying, well, where's Ruben Love going to get a chance?
Yeah.
We might have to wait until Wales for that. Then you've got to look at Scotland. They named their team today, Martin, and I thought a couple of surprises in that selection.
Okay, we'll run those by us, because I've got a whole lot of questions from what you've just said, but give us the Scotland team first and what you think on that.
Oh, okay. All right, mate. Well, first and foremost, the guy that I thought would be one of the first names written down was Duhan van der Merwe, the big South African-born left winger. He's one of those players who can just come up with a massive play. He can break a defence. He was terrific for the Lions.
Yeah, try scoring
machine. He's been left out altogether. They've gone for another South African-born winger, Kyle Steyn, who is seen as a bit more of a, well, I saw the word grafter applied to him. He's got a really high work rate, perhaps not that quite out-and-out brilliance of Duhan van der Merwe, but that was a real surprise to me. The one that the Scottish journalists, it's interesting, they're being pretty low-key about this. I know there's a lot of talk about this being Scotland's best chance, but the message I was getting from those guys is they think that the unavailability of Xander Fagerson, their tight head prop, is a real blow for Scotland, because he has really anchored their scrum for a long period of time now. The poor guy had an injury, missed out on the Lions too, and he just hasn't recovered from that in time. So that's a bit of a loss too. They've gone in with a 6-2 split between forwards and backs, which is interesting. But look, there's still, even if they're not at full strength, I think Jamie Ritchie is one, and also Hugh Jones, a very good centre. he's had to have surgery on his Achilles, so they're not at full strength. But still, it's a pretty good looking Scotland side, and they move the ball, they attack, they really do try and create things. Of all of the Six Nations team, they probably have the most out and out attacking mindset, just in terms of using their backs, trying to put players into space, and that presents a really interesting challenge. And the All Black defensive side of things, they know they're going to have to stay really well connected, because with Finn Russell pulling the strings, calling the shots in his very flamboyant style, there's no question that there are threats in that Scotland backline.
No, and they're going to be pumping it high. We know that, right? Because we saw it last week. We're still uncertain under that high ball, and it is a vulnerability in the All Blacks, and has been all this year and last year as well. And so, it's just. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, argue with me on this.
Yeah, I don't know. To do that, they would have to depart from how they normally play. I mean, their ball and hand stats are probably the highest of any team in the Six Nations. They like to keep the ball in hand. They like to pass it. Of course, they do kick, but whether they'll kick as much as we saw from Ireland or South Africa, that's quite a big question mark going into this game. If you wouldn't blame them for kicking, because we saw it again in Chicago, didn't we? Yep. The All Blacks are still struggling to claim those high balls.
Let's go back to our guys then, Tony. As always, a lot of comments coming in every time you talk, and we absolutely encourage it. I love it. I love all the feedback that we get. Keep it seemly, people, always. We're just talking about sport here. Beauden Barrett versus Damien McKenzie. Any thought at all? Did anyone ask any questions about? Look, Beauden did take a couple to the bonds in that game. Was there any thought at all about swapping those guys over, or just what we saw from Damien when he came on and that impact? And I want to go through that bench again, because the bench was really impressive for us against Ireland. Was there any possibility at all that they may have given Damien that jersey, or Beauden absolutely fully fit again?
Well, firstly, in terms of Beauden Barrett, he fronted today, and he seemed in really good nick. In fact, he played, there's a fantastic golf course here where they had the British Open last year. Is it the Renaissance Golf Course? Is that what it's called? I can't remember the name of it now, just off the top of my head, but he shot 78 there. So I think
that's not bad. That's not bad, Tony. That's not bad. Tell you what, you'd be quite happy with that. Yeah, that's a pro score, isn't it? Or a pretty bad pro score, but it's still.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So no, look, I just think they see him as their number one option there, and they like the dynamic, to use that word again, that McKenzie can inject into the game later on in the piece.
Sure.
And we saw it in Chicago, and I think the bench was a really big part of that game. And so the bench becomes, really much a big part of your game plan. And at the moment, I just think they're sold on the idea that, particularly without Geordie Barrett there in the midfield, because a lot of the play normally centres around him. So without him there, they really do feel that their chief navigator is that combination between Roygaard and Barrett, and then McKenzie coming off the bench later on, just injecting that X factor that he brings to the game. That's the formula that they're looking at, and it certainly worked for them in Chicago last week.
A couple, Sever and Jacobson, back to the New Zealand 15. So that just what you mentioned earlier about some players may not get a game on this tour to Wales, and also Josh Berry going back. He, of course, joined for training purposes and things. But just the fact that they sent those two guys back gives an indication that neither of them were going to be selected for this game, or perhaps even England. And I want to bring up, where does it leave Rieko Ioane now as well, Tony? Because obviously Geordie Barrett, if he's fit, you'd think claims the 12 jersey. Now we've got a brand new midfield combination. We've got Proctor, and you would have thought that, and we've spoken about this, Rieko has ability to play wing and centre, a good bench replacement because of that. But now Proctor being an out-and-out centre, and so that says to me that, as you suggested, other options. If there's an injury, Leicester goes to the wing. Maybe Will Jordan goes to one wing and Damien McKenzie comes on at fullback. So does this step Rieko right down the pecking order, does it?
Yeah, could well be. I can't see, to me, if Leicester Fainga'anuku plays again like he played last week, to me that 13 jersey's his. Just the power that he brings. But we know what a terrific player Billy Proctor is, and he would probably be, just behind Whanganui in the pecking order now. I mean, there was some thought that maybe they would go for Rico Ioane as the backup for this game because he can play centre and wing, but obviously with Whanganui really having played so much of his rugby in New Zealand, at least as a winger, that's got that option covered as well. At least with the All Blacks 15 here, it does give them the opportunity to send a couple of guys to have a game there. The only thing you'd have to think is that by the time you get to Wales, some of those guys have not had any meaningful rugby for quite some time.
Right.
There is another part to the dynamic here. Sorry, I'm thrashing that word a bit today, aren't I? But when you're preparing a team, you want players there who can provide live opposition. When you practice your scrums, your line outs, and you work your defensive plays, that is one of the reasons why they like to have big squads. So you can have a live, almost, like a 15-on-15 scenario when they're doing their full training run. So it's not all about getting players on the field for games, which might seem a bit tough, particularly on some people. They go away, they get picked for the tour, they go away, and all they do is train. But they are, again, at the same time, they're trying to build depth because they've talked a lot about that going 4 deep, and it's not just the All Blacks who are trying to do that. So, yeah, I think for some players, they'll probably get to the end of this tour and there might be some frustrations, and probably some of their supporters back home will be feeling that frustration as well. But to say, I think at the moment they're going to play pretty much the core of the same 15 players through the first 3, and then we'll see what happens when they get to Wales.
Just in terms of that bench, finally, so it did have such impact against Ireland. Karifi's a completely different player from Wallace, and so when he comes on, you expect him to be more embroiled in the contact area, trying to get turnovers, as opposed to being freely running. So do we lose a little bit there? Because do you see what I mean with that?
Oh yeah, I do see what you mean. I mean, but again, it's the balance, and they feel that his defensive play. It also says to me, I think that they're expecting a pretty strong challenge from Scotland, and maybe you get into that last quarter of the game, that's when you might find yourself doing some defending, a fair bit of defending, and so you've got someone who's a very good poacher at the breakdown, very solid defender. That may be the guy that they want in that role for this Test match, particularly. And as I say, with Parker having been removed from the mix altogether, maybe it is that they feel that he's not 100%. I don't know, but Scott Robertson today said no, that they felt it was a tactical thing why they picked Karifi to come on the field.
I don't know whether this news came to you before the team announcement, but it seems it's just a bizarre time. I mean, I understand it because we watched Cody Taylor do it this year, and he came back brilliantly. But they've announced today that Scott Barrett's not playing Super Rugby. The timing of it was just like, what? Why now? Well, I mean, I don't know. It just seems a bit weird to announce it in the middle of a tour.
It's because they named the squads, didn't they? They named them all at once. And so they just needed to be upfront about it. The fact that, these are why we've picked, or this is why we've picked these guys, because Scott Barrett's not going to be, he's not going to miss all of Super Rugby. He'll be like Cody Taylor. He'll come in late in the piece. And I know people get frustrated with sabbaticals and what have you. I certainly do. Some of the ones where they grant players sabbaticals to go overseas, they grind the gears a little bit. But I think with a guy like Scott Barrett, who is really important to this All Black team. He's the captain. He's a leader. He's also, whilst he's not a flashy player, but he is one of the hard workers in the team. A guy who does a lot of moving of bodies at the breakdown, contributes in different ways. It's as much for some of these guys a mental thing as it is a physical thing. And before people start screwing up their noses and saying what a load of woke nonsense, and that the biggest proponent of it, one of the shining examples of the benefit of taking a break completely from rugby. This is not a guy who's going to go off and play in Japan or France or something. This is a guy who's going to take a complete break from rugby. And Richie McCaw
let's remember that.
It put time on his career at the other end. And he felt that when he came back from taking a complete break from playing rugby, he was in the best shape mentally and physically that he'd been in a long time.
Tone, I've been thoroughly enjoying your little reporting pieces. It takes me back to the TV3 days when you used to present the news for our younger viewers who don't remember Tony there, but you look as though you're enjoying it. And also just what you're showing us of Edinburgh, for everyone who's not been there, it is like, if you can eventually get over there, whether it's to watch rugby or just to visit the place, it's a beautiful city, isn't it?
Oh, mate, it's great, especially with the weather clearing up a bit. It was a bit drizzly for a while, but it just all those magnificent buildings made out of that. There's a particular type of stone that they use. Of course, you've got the castle, you've got the Burns Monument, but just you walk down the street and you look up at these wonderful buildings. There's a lovely atmosphere. A lot of tourists here at the moment. The tourism industry seems to be thriving here. I've got to say a couple of things I would say. I know we're very unhappy about how much things are costing in New Zealand, but mate, the prices over here are shocking.
Wow. Okay.
Really, really expensive. We're talking about how we're going to stretch the per diem. But the other thing too, just by the by, Wednesday is a day off for the team. They had various things, as I say. Bowden Barrett went off and played golf. Some of them went on a tour of the castle. Scott Robertson went looking for some surf, but couldn't find it anywhere. We did some work in the morning. We were shooting scenics for our match build-up. And then in the afternoon, we had a few hours to spare. So our producer, Mark Kearns, and I got on the car and we drove up to St Andrews.
Oh, okay, great.
The home of golf. And it took us about an hour and a half to get up there. And of course, it's not just about the golf course. They've got the university there where Prince William and Kate met and first started having their relationship.
Tony, I didn't think you read the Women's Day, but hello. Yeah, all right.
But we got to have a little walk because it's a public course and you can actually walk out onto the course and get your photograph taken on is it called the Swilton Bridge, that old stone bridge goes over the burn. Get your photograph taken in front of the clubhouse and the old hotel there. The beach there where they had the opening scene of Chariots of Fire. And they were all running along the beach. That's St Andrews as well. So, yeah, that was, we just basically had our half day off, which is as much as we're going to get off this week. And it was a great thing to do. So, yeah, I love Scotland. Got a lot of family origins here as well. And I'm just so looking forward to this game this weekend. Because it really is quite special to go to Murrayfield. It's a unique atmosphere, and the situation this weekend with Remembrance Day. And I don't know, did I mention it before? The All Blacks are going to wear the white jersey.
Oh, Tony, no, that was the final thing. Yeah, so it's weird, isn't it? Because normally in rugby, it's different in football. The home team wears your home jersey, but normally in rugby, the home team ends up swapping it. But we're wearing the white jerseys. Is that because it's Remembrance Day? And I don't know why, but I suppose it might have something to do with it.
That's how it was put to us today. I think that, yes, because it's Remembrance Day, because New Zealand's the visiting team, they will wear the white jersey and it will have the poppy on the sleeve. And that's a gesture I think that'll go down very well with the public here. Scotland will get to wear their own jersey, but the New Zealand team, by wearing that poppy, as they always do at this time of the year when they're over here, it's a very meaningful gesture. And of course, a tribute to the thousands of New Zealanders who came over this way, particularly in the First World War, which, the origins of these Memorial Days that we have. It's just another layer on what's going to be. It's a game that just can't come fast enough.
Tone, we appreciate Sky Sport very much for giving us to you and so much time this week. 3:30 the build-up starts Sunday morning. Have a great call, mate. Enjoy it, and we'll talk on Monday.
Cheers, Marty. Thanks, mate.
Huge thank you to Novus Glass for sponsoring this episode of the DSPN and for being a proud partner of the Special Olympics New Zealand. This December, over 1,200 incredible athletes, along with hundreds of volunteers, coaches and other support staff, will be making their way to Christchurch or Tautahi for the Special Olympics New Zealand 2025 National Summer Games. Novus Glass is proud to be supporting something special, and you can help support the athletes too by texting Novus to 3598. That's Novus, Novus 3598. Thanks again, Novus Glass, for supporting us here on the DSPN. Windscreen, crack or chip, notice it, Novus it.
This is the DSPN.